Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. Luneth Arcloon screamed when the iron collar snapped shut around her throat, forcing her to her knees in the silver cairn. Cold stone bruised her skin as the moon climbed higher, staining the sky a bruised blue. Wolves ringed the clearing, silent, watching, their breath fogging the night air. Someone laughed. Someone else threw dirt at her hair. Luneth tasted blood and ash in shame. Her wrists burned where rope cut flesh, and every heartbeat thudded like a drum announcing her failure. She had trusted Ivara. She had believed kindness could survive hunger. Now elders stood above her, cloaks heavy, eyes sharp with judgment. They called her cursed, called her danger, called her girl without pack. When the blade nicked her palm, her blood spilled onto ancient stone and glowed silver blue, bright as frost under moonlight. Gasps rippled outward. The runes flared alive beneath her, heat blooming. Luneth froze, terror giving way to something worse. Certainty. Across the circle, the Alpha stepped forward. Vylar Duskheart's gaze locked onto hers, and the world narrowed to his breath. Her blood, and the moon's sudden, roaring pull. It felt like fate tightening its grip. Merciless, ancient, and awake around her heart and bones tonight alone. Vylar Duskheart had learned to fear the moon long before he learned to rule. Each cycle stole pieces of him, leaving scars beneath skin and guilt in his wake. Tonight, as Luneth's blood sang, the curse recoiled like a wounded beast. His wolf went silent. Valor staggered, breath tearing free, shock cracking his composure. The elders did not see relief. They saw threat. Irin Morshade lifted his staff, voice, slicing the air with ancient law. Kill her now. End it cleanly. Valor's hands shook. He remembered children hiding when he passed. Remembered chains and cells and screams he could never unhear. He stepped closer, drawn despite himself. The closer he came, the warmer the air grew, the brighter the runes burned. Luneth lifted her chin, defiant, eyes bright with fear she refused to show. When their gazes met, the curse loosened further, unraveling thread by thread. Valor understood then that she was not his enemy. She was the key, and keys could free or destroy, depending on who turned them. Power hummed between them, heavy and undeniable, promising salvation, demanding sacrifice, and daring him to choose mercy over fear before the night claimed everything else they believed permanent and true. The command came anyway. Halvik Kralmir advanced, blade bare, duty etched into every rigid step. Panic surged through Luneth, sharp and electric. She twisted, rope biting deeper, and felt heat bloom under her skin. The moon answered her pulse. Light burst outward, snapping fibers, cracking stone. Wolves were thrown back like leaves. Luneth gasped as warmth flooded her veins. Not pain, but belonging. The ropes fell. She stood shaking free, glowing faintly. Silence swallowed the clearing. Valor dropped to one knee, hand pressed to his chest, eyes wide with disbelief. The curse had retreated completely, leaving only quiet. Fear replaced fury in the elders' faces. Salis Bramblewind whispered a prayer, hands trembling. Luneth looked down at her glowing palms and understood nothing would ever be the same. Freedom tasted dangerous. Every instinct screamed run. Instead she stayed, because Valor was staring at her like a man seeing dawn after endless night, and because the moon had chosen her for a reason she could no longer deny. Across the ring, whispers spread fast, fear mixing with awe, as ancient prophecy stirred awake within watching hearts, and the elders felt their authority begin to fracture under moonlit truth they could not stop. Irin Morshade recovered first, rage burning through his shock. He accused Luneth of witchcraft, of manipulation, of ensnaring the Alpha. The crowd wavered. Valor rose slowly, placing himself between Luneth and the blades. The movement shocked everyone. protecting her meant defying centuries. Valor's voice carried, steady but raw, as he ordered the execution halted. "The curse is bound to her," he said, "and so is my fate." Murmurs erupted. Luneth felt the weight of every stare, every judgment. She was no hero. She was hungry, tired, and terrified, yet something stronger anchored her feet. Salis stepped forward, revealing scrolls hidden for decades, proof of the moon's bloodline. The truth spilled out in fragments, dangerous and overdue. Luneth's blood was not a curse, but a balance. Kill her, and the Alpha's madness would return, worse than before. Silence fell again, heavy and final. Luneth realized. Survival now meant staying close to the man who frightened her most. And Valor realized the same, standing rigid, sensing their lives knotting together under laws older than any crown, any oath written in starlight, sealed in blood, and awakened tonight by the moon with consequences neither of them could escape without breaking entirely at all. The moon dipped behind clouds, plunging the silver cairn into shadow, and the crowd slowly withdrew, unsettled and afraid. Luneth remained, heart pounding, alone with the Alpha at last. Wind tugged her hair, carrying pine and smoke. Valor spoke quietly, asking her name like it mattered. When she answered, the sound seemed to steady him. He warned her the pack would not forgive easily. Enemies would rise. Laws would bend or break. Luneth swallowed, knowing she could flee into the forest and vanish. Instead, she asked him a single question: if the curse returned without her. Valor's silence was answer enough. She nodded once. Decision. Settling hard and fast. She would stay, not for the pack, not for prophecy, but for herself, for dignity, for the strange warmth growing whenever she stood near him. Above them, the moon emerged again, watching. In its pale light, Luneth Arcloon became more than a prisoner. She became the girl with the moon's blood, fated to break an Alpha's curse, or shatter his world trying. The night breathed around them, promising trials, betrayals, and love forged under fire as the story of Blackridge truly began, with consequences echoing far beyond this clearing into tomorrow alone. Morning crept into Grave Moon Hollow like a cautious animal, pale light sliding between ash pine trunks and settling on Luneth Arcloon's sleepless eyes. She stood at the edge of the clearing where she had been given a temporary shelter, listening to the pack wake around her with guarded murmurs. No one approached. No one offered food. The freedom of last night already felt fragile. Every sound seemed sharpened, every movement watched. When she flexed her fingers, a faint warmth lingered beneath her skin, a reminder of the power that had burst free under the moon. She did not understand it, only knew it responded to fear and truth. Behind her, the shelter door creaked. Valor Duscart stepped out, shoulders tense, eyes shadowed but clear. The curse had not returned with dawn, and that terrified him more than madness ever had. He studied her as if she might vanish. Luneth turned, meeting his gaze without lowering her head. The silence between them was heavy, stitched together by necessity, distrust, and the thin, trembling hope neither dared speak aloud yet. Birds stirred above, uneasy witnesses to a future balancing on breath, blood, and choices neither pack nor moon would easily forgive today onward. Valor led Luneth through the heart of the settlement, boots crunching gravel, eyes following them from doorways and balconies carved into stone. Children were pulled back by anxious parents. Old wolves muttered prayers. Luneth kept her spine straight, refusing to shrink. Each step felt like crossing a blade. Valor spoke low, explaining rules she had never agreed to, but must survive. She would be watched. She would not leave the territory. She would eat last. The words stung, yet honesty steadied her. At the longhouse, Irin Morshade waited, staff planted like a threat. He questioned Luneth's lineage, her mother's silence, the night of her birth. Answers surfaced as memories: a screaming storm, a midwife's fear, a silver mark fading by dawn. Salis Bramblewind intervened, insisting on patience and proof. Tension snapped tight. Valor felt the curse stir faintly at Irin's raised voice, a warning tremor. He ended the interrogation abruptly, declaring Luneth under his protection until truths were known. Gasps followed. Luneth exhaled slowly. Protection felt like another cage, but it kept her alive. Outside, clouds gathered, mirroring unrest, while unseen plans began, turning, patient and sharp, in minds already counting costs for tomorrow's trials and whispered alliances forming soon. That night, Luneth lay awake on a thin pallet, staring at rafters dark with smoke. Hunger gnawed, but fear gnawed deeper. She replayed Erin's questions, searching for gaps. Her mother had vanished when Luneth was young, leaving only songs about the moon and warnings about trust. A knock sounded. Valor entered with bread and water, setting them down carefully, as if approaching a wild thing. He apologized without excuses. The word felt heavy, rare. Luneth ate slowly, studying him. Up close, scars mapped his hands, history etched into skin. He confessed the curse stole control, not memory, and guilt lived with him every day. Silence softened them. When Luneth asked what breaking the curse required, Valor admitted ignorance. Prophecies were riddles. Elders lied to keep power. What he knew was simple. When she was near, the beast slept. The admission frightened them both. Outside, a howl rose, then another, uneasy. Luneth felt warmth pulse in response. Valor stiffened, watching her with equal parts fear and wonder, as the truth settled that distance between them might be deadly. Neither slept afterward, aware that dawn would bring tests demanding courage, sacrifice, and trust, neither yet possessed fully from fragile hearts bound together. By morning, rumors raced faster than feet. Torek Fenro shadowed Luneth as assigned, offering curt directions and quieter kindness. He slipped her an apple, eyes averted. Small mercies mattered. Training grounds echoed with clashes as Valor drilled warriors harder than ever, anger fueling discipline. Luneth watched from the fence, sensing currents beneath noise. When Valor lost focus, pain flickered across his face, the curse scratching back. Instinct pulled Luneth forward. She stepped onto the sand. Gasps burst. She reached for him, warmth flowing without thought. The pain eased. Valor steadied, shock rippling through the onlookers. Erin's glare promised consequences. Salus announced an experiment at dusk. Controlled, observed, dangerous. Luneth agreed before fear could answer. If she was the balance, hiding would only sharpen blades. The day stretched taut. Whispers followed her steps. Evora Linth watched from shadows, jaw tight with envy and regret. Luneth felt it like a prickle. Betrayal had layers. As dusk bled purple across the sky, drums began, slow and ominous, calling them back to the silver cairn where truths would be tested again. The moon rose quietly, patient as ever, waiting to see who would break first when power demanded payment under ancient laws and watching. Night wrapped the cairn in cold light. Circles were drawn, rules spoken. Luneth stood at the center, breathing measured, refusing to tremble. Valor took position opposite her, close enough to feel heat, far enough to fear loss. Salus instructed them to synchronize breath with moonrise. The drums stopped. Silence pressed in. When Luneth opened herself to the warmth, the runes awakened gently, like embers. Valor felt the curse surface, then soften, unspooling. Pain gave way to calm. The pack watched, stunned. Erin interrupted, accusing deceit, lunging forward to break the circle. Evera moved too, desperation flashing. Luneth reacted on instinct, lifting her hands. Light flared, knocking Erin back. Harmless, but undeniable. The truth landed hard. She could protect, not just heal. Fear shifted into something new. Reverence. Valor met her eyes, awe and resolve steadying him. He spoke loudly, claiming responsibility, binding his fate to hers before witnesses. The declaration changed everything. Luneth's heart raced, realizing escape was gone. Yet beneath fear, purpose rooted. The moon blazed overhead, sealing a path forward. neither could abandon now. Beyond the stones, enemies listened, alliances formed, and destiny leaned closer, sharpening consequences that would soon demand blood or mercy from every watching soul. Luneth Arkloon woke before dawn to the sound of boots outside her shelter, each step measured and deliberate. The air smelled of wet stone and pine sap, the kind of morning that carried secrets instead of peace. When she stepped outside, Torek Fenro waited with 2 others, their expressions unreadable. He told her the council demanded her presence again, this time without Valor. Fear flickered, but she masked it, following anyway. Grave Moon Hollow felt tighter today, paths narrowing beneath hostile stares. At the council ring, Erin Morshade sat rigid, anger barely contained beneath ritual calm. Questions came sharper now, probing her childhood, her mother's silence, the exact moment her blood first glowed. Luneth answered honestly, refusing embellishment. With every truth, pressure built, like the pack wanted her to crack and confess to something monstrous. When Erin accused her of planning control over the Alpha, Luneth snapped back, voice steady, pride burning. The council murmured. Outside the ring, Avaralinth listened, fingers clenched. Luneth sensed eyes everywhere, weighing her worth in fear and utility. As the meeting ended unresolved, Luneth realized they weren't deciding guilt. They were deciding ownership, and the thought chilled her more than chains ever had before. Valor trained alone at the cliff edge, driving his body until sweat blurred his vision. The curse stirred restlessly, irritated by Luneth's distance. Each strike against the post, Etwar echoed his frustration. He hated that the council had separated them, hated needing anyone to remain whole. When Torek delivered the order barring him from intervening, Valor nearly shattered the wood beneath his fists. Instead, he forced control, knowing defiance would endanger her. Memories surfaced unbidden, moons where he woke surrounded by blood, elders watching with relief when he survived. The curse had shaped his rule, carved fear into loyalty. Now, with Luneth near, hope threatened that balance. He wondered if freeing himself meant condemning her to a life caged by his people. The thought twisted deep. When Salis Bramblewind approached quietly, Valor listened. She warned that Erin sought leverage, not justice. The moon's blood could shift power structures older than stone. Valor asked the question he feared most. What would happen if Luneth left? Salis hesitated, then answered truthfully. The curse would return stronger. Faster! Valor closed his eyes, realizing choice was an illusion. Protecting her wasn't kindness. It was survival for them both, entwined beyond comfort or consent now. That evening, Luneth was assigned work among the outer gardens, a calculated humiliation disguised as duty. Dirt caked beneath her nails as whispers followed her movements. Children stared openly, curiosity battling fear. When one tripped near her, Luneth caught him without thinking, warmth pulsing gently. The child smiled, unafraid. A mother yanked him back, apologizing with her eyes. Luneth swallowed hard, understanding the cost of visibility. Evra approached under pretense of help, voice soft, venom underneath. She spoke of old friendship, of envy, of how easily Luneth had changed everything without trying. When Avara asked if Luneth planned to take Valor from the pack, Luneth laughed bitterly. She didn't want power. She wanted safety. The conversation soured quickly. Avara warned her the elders would never allow balance. Something must always bleed. As dusk fell, Luneth felt unease coil tight. The moon rose thin and sharp, stirring warmth and dread alike. She sensed Valor's pain flare faintly across the distance, a tug in her chest answering his. Without permission, she left the gardens, drawn toward him. Unaware eyes followed silently, plans aligning with practiced patience under growing shadows. They met at the cliff, just as the moon cleared cloud cover, pale light spilling over rock and sea. Valor turned. When Luneth approached, relief softening his rigid posture. Words failed them. Instead, they stood close, breaths sinking, the curse easing like a receding tide. Luneth described the council's questions, the hunger in their stares. Valor confessed Salus's warning. Truth settled heavy between them. When Luneth asked if he regretted claiming her fate publicly, Valor answered without hesitation. No. The certainty startled her. He explained the curse had taught him what monsters look like, and she was not one. The intimacy of the moment frightened them both. A howl cut the air, then another closer than expected. Torches flared below. Torek shouted a warning. Valor pulled Luneth behind him as figures emerged, led by Irin and Halvek Cromir. Accusations flew: forbidden meeting, manipulation, treason. Luneth felt fear spike, power answering dangerously. Valor ordered restraint, but Irin raised his staff, chanting. The curse surged violently, responding to threat. Luneth grabbed Valor's hands, grounding him, light bursting outward. Rocks cracked, the cliff shuddered. Everyone froze as the power revealed itself undeniable, raw and terrifyingly alive beneath the moon. When the tremor faded, silence reigned. Irin stared, shaken, authority cracking. Halvek lowered his blade. Luneth released Valor slowly, hands trembling. She understood now. Her presence amplified truth, stripped lies bare. That made her dangerous. Valor addressed the gathered wolves, voice ringing across stone. He declared Luneth under full alpha protection, beyond council reach, until the curse was broken, or he fell. Gasps followed. Irin retreated, masks slipping, hatred burning. Avera watched from the edge, face pale with realization. Lines were drawn tonight, sharper than before. As the crowd dispersed uneasily, Luneth felt exhaustion crash over her. Valor steadied her, offering strength without ownership. She accepted, knowing tomorrow would demand more. Below, the sea crashed, endlessly, indifferent, witness to vows and threats. The moon lingered overhead, patient, as if measuring them. Luneth realized chapter by chapter, fear by fear, her life was no longer about survival alone. It was about choosing who she became when power demanded purpose. And somewhere in the dark, consequences gathered, waiting for the next mistake to spill blood or truth across the stones. Rain fell hard over Gravemoon Hollow, washing ash and dust into the ravines like the land itself was trying to cleanse what had been revealed. Luneth Arkloon stood beneath the overhang of her shelter, watching water carve paths through stone. The cliff incident had spread like wildfire. Some wolves now bowed their heads when she passed. Others turned their backs. Respect and resentment braided tightly together. She felt heavier today, not from fear, but from awareness. Power was no longer theoretical. It responded to her breath, her heartbeat, her choices. When Salus Bramblewind arrived with a bundle of old parchments wrapped in oilskin, Luneth sensed a shift. Inside were fragments of a ritual older than the pack, describing the moon's blood as a bridge, not a weapon. The curse, it said, fed on isolation and fear. Balance required connection and consent. Luneth frowned at the words, realizing how easily they could be twisted. Salus warned her quietly that Irin Morshade had begun gathering support beyond Gravemoon Hollow. Elders from neighboring territories feared change more than madness. Luneth closed her eyes, rain dampening her lashes, understanding that her presence had already ignited something far larger than survival. The storm intensified, echoing the tension, tightening its grip around the pack and her fragile place within it. Valor Duskheart convened a war council by firelight, rain hissing as it struck flame. He listened more than he spoke, studying faces for fractures. Torek Fenro reported movement near Ashpine Reach, unfamiliar scents marking borders. Halvek Cromir confirmed whispers of alliance among traditionalists. The curse stirred uneasily beneath Valor's ribs, reacting to looming conflict. He forced calm, grounding himself in memory of Luneth's steadying presence. When he announced plans to strengthen patrols and restrict council authority temporarily, outrage flared. Iren accused him of tyranny masked as protection. Valor responded with controlled fury, reminding them who bled to keep them safe each moon. Silence followed, thick and resentful. Afterward, Valor found Luneth waiting outside, rain slicking her hair to her face. He apologized for the danger his decisions brought. She surprised him by thanking him instead, for choosing clarity over comfort. They walked together beneath dripping pines, speaking softly about responsibility and fear. Valor admitted ruling had always been about minimizing damage, never healing. Luneth said healing was rarely clean. The words lingered. When they parted, Valor felt the curse quiet, soothed by something fragile and human. Yet he knew leadership now meant preparing for war against his own kind, and protecting Luneth would demand sacrifices he had not yet named. Evera Linth watched from the old watchtower, rain streaking the stones like tears she refused to shed. She had grown up beside Luneth, shared secrets and hunger, dreamed of belonging. Now Luneth stood at the center of everything, adored and feared, while Evera faded into the crowd. Iren's promises echoed in her mind. Restore order, restore fairness, restore the world as it was. When he approached her again, offering purpose, Evera listened. He spoke of the danger Luneth posed, of power unchecked. He spoke of Valor's weakness, softened by hope. Evera told herself she was protecting the pack. That envy had nothing to do with it. She agreed to guide scouts through hidden paths at Ashpine Reach. The decision felt heavy, but necessary. Meanwhile, Luneth worked beside Salus, learning control. Through breath and focus, each lesson revealed limits and costs. The power drained her when misused. It demanded honesty. When Luneth faltered, Salus reminded her balance was not dominance. Outside, thunder rolled, distant and ominous. Luneth sensed threads tightening around her fate, unseen hands pulling toward collision. She wondered who would stand beside her when fear finally outweighed wonder, and whether kindness would survive what came next under gathering storm clouds. The first attack came at dusk. A patrol failed to return. Smoke rose near the border, black against bruised sky. Valor moved fast, rallying warriors. Luneth followed despite protests, knowing distance weakened them both. At Ashpine Reach, they found scorched ground and broken bodies. The curse surged violently, feeding on rage and grief. Luneth grabbed Valor's arm, grounding him as arrows whistled from trees. Ambushers surged forward, faces masked, movements trained. Battle erupted, chaotic and loud. Luneth, focused, warmth flowing outward like a shield, deflecting blows, dulling strikes. She was not invincible. Pain lanced when a blade grazed her side. Valor roared, pushing back attackers with brutal efficiency. In the clash, Luneth spotted Evera slipping away, horror dawning. Betrayal burned sharper than wounds. The attackers retreated abruptly, mission accomplished. Silence fell, broken by groans and rain. Luneth sank to her knees, exhausted, blood mixing with mud. Valor knelt beside her, hands gentle, fear naked in his eyes. She whispered Ivara's name. Understanding darkened his expression. This was no random attack. It was a warning, and worse would follow. They returned to Gravemoon Hollow, carrying the dead. Grief hung thick, turning whispers into anger. Iren seized the moment, accusing Luneth of drawing violence, of weakening defenses. The crowd wavered, fear eroding loyalty. Luneth stood before them, bleeding and shaking, refusing to hide. She spoke simply, owning her power, and its cost, refusing false innocence. She said she would leave if it spared lives. The curse flared in Valor, reacting to the idea. He stepped forward, rejecting sacrifice without consent. He declared the pack must choose change or endless blood. The words split the crowd. Some knelt, others turned away. The moon rose behind clouds, light fractured. Luneth felt the path narrowing. Tonight proved balance invited war. As the pack fractured along belief lines, Luneth realized love, loyalty, and power would soon be tested beyond endurance. Chapter by chapter, choice by choice. The cost of breaking a curse was revealing itself, and it would not be paid lightly by any heart still beating under the moon. Grave Moon Hollow did not sleep after the attack. Fires burned low, casting restless shadows across stone and bark, while grief pressed down like fog. Luneth Arkloon sat alone near the healer's den as Salis stitched the shallow cut at her side. Each pull of thread stung, grounding her, in pain that felt earned. Around them, whispers hardened into judgment. Some wolves believed the ambush proved Luneth's danger. Others believed it proved the elder's corruption. Luneth felt caught between tides she could not command. When Salis finished, she pressed Luneth's hands together, urging rest and restraint. But Luneth's thoughts churned. Avara's face haunted her. Fearful, determined, broken. Betrayal hurt most because it echoed old wounds. Hunger, abandonment, the way survival had always demanded sacrifice. Outside, Torek stood guard, eyes alert. He told Luneth the dead would be honored at dawn, their names sung into the stone. The ritual would bind the pack or fracture it further. Luneth wondered if her presence would poison even grief. As the moon slipped behind clouds, she closed her eyes and breathed, calling warmth inward, steadying the tremor of power and doubt coiling tight in her chest tonight. Valor Duskheart faced the council before sunrise, armor, half-fastened, voice rough from command and restraint. He demanded accountability for the breach, for hidden paths revealed, for alliances whispered in shadow. Irin Morshade countered with blame sharp as knives, pointing to Luneth as catalyst. The exchange escalated, anger snapping like dry wood. Valor ended it with authority that stunned the room. An investigation led by Salis, patrols restructured under Torek, council power suspended until truth emerged. Halvet Cromir bristled but obeyed. Leadership tasted bitter but necessary. Alone afterward, Valor pressed a palm to his chest as the curse stirred faintly, irritated by stress. He steadied himself by recalling Luneth's breath, her quiet resolve. When he found her at the memorial stones, dawn bleeding gold into gray, he stood beside her without touching. Names were sung. Tears fell. Valor felt the weight of lives on his shoulders and understood. Protecting Luneth meant protecting change itself. He promised her honesty, even when it hurt. She promised him courage, even when afraid. The vows were small, unceremonious, but they held. The investigation began immediately. Salis questioned scouts, traced scents, followed threads others ignored. Evidence pointed inward. Routes only inner circle wolves knew had been used. Torek confirmed the timing aligned with council meetings. Suspicion crept like rot. Luneth assisted where she could, sensing echoes left behind by strong emotion. Fear left sharp traces. Greed left stains. Each discovery drained her, reminding her power demanded payment. Midday brought a confrontation. Avara was captured near Ashpine Reach. Hands bound, eyes wild. Luneth insisted on seeing her before judgment. The meeting was raw. Avara confessed guiding outsiders under Irin's direction, convinced she was restoring order. She denied wanting Luneth harmed, insisting she believed the Alpha would intervene. Luneth heard the lie beneath truth. Intent did not erase consequence. She asked Evera why she never came to her. Evera laughed bitterly, saying Luneth had become untouchable. The words cut deep. When guards led Evera away, Luneth wept quietly, mourning a friendship already dead. Justice would come, but healing felt farther than ever. Outside, thunder rolled again, a reminder storms were not finished with them yet. That evening, Salis revealed the ritual's next requirement, consent from both bridge and bearer under full moon, performed at the Silver Cairn, witnessed by the pack. The curse would be confronted directly. Failure could kill them both. Success could shatter old laws. The timing was unforgiving. 3 nights hence. Valor accepted without hesitation. Luneth did too, though fear pulsed bright. Preparation consumed them. Breathing drills, touch exercises to anchor the curse without drowning Luneth's strength. Moments of quiet where laughter surprised them, fragile and rare. Valor shared stories of his childhood before the curse, of a brother lost. Luneth shared songs her mother sang, lullabies shaped like prayers. Connection deepened, dangerous and necessary. The pack watched with mixed awe and dread. Irin withdrew, gathering supporters beyond the hollow. Halvek sharpened blades. Torek doubled guards. On the second night, Luneth collapsed from exhaustion. Vylor caught her, panic breaking his composure. He realized then how easily protection could become possession. He loosened his grip, choosing trust. She rested, waking stronger, resolve tempered by care rather than fear alone. On the eve of the ritual, a messenger arrived bloodied, bearing news of allied packs marching. Time collapsed inward, decisions hardened. Valor addressed the pack beneath a restless moon, speaking plainly. War would come whether they liked it or not. The ritual was their chance to end the curse and change the future. Those who stood with them would be protected. Those who left were free to go. Some departed under cover of night. Others stayed, eyes bright with belief or desperation. Luneth felt the weight of their hope settle heavy. She stepped forward, voice clear, telling them she was afraid too. Fear did not make her weak. It made her careful. She promised to give everything she had, not to rule, but to balance. The honesty shifted something, knees bent. Not all, but enough. As the moon climbed, Luneth and Valor stood together at the cairn, hands brushing, readying for a dawn that would decide who they became. Somewhere beyond the trees, enemies gathered. Within the circle, hearts steadied. The price of breaking a curse would be paid soon, and no one would leave unchanged. The night of the ritual arrived wrapped in cold clarity, the kind that sharpened every sound and shadow. Luneth Arkloon stood at the edge of the silver cairn, barefoot on stone chilled by centuries of moonrise. The sky was painfully clear, stars scattered like watching eyes. Around the circle, torches burned low, flames bending inward as if pulled by the power coiling at the center. The pack gathered in silence, divided not by distance but by belief. Luneth's breathing was slow, deliberate, each inhale pulling warmth into her chest, each exhale steadying her hands. She felt the moon's pull stronger than ever, not demanding but expectant. Saelus Bramblewind traced runes anew, murmuring words older than law. Valor Duskheart stood opposite Luneth, stripped of armor, scars exposed, posture unguarded. The curse stirred beneath his skin, restless, sensing confrontation. Luneth met his gaze and saw fear mirrored there, raw and honest. Not fear of pain, but of failure. She nodded once, anchoring him. When the drums sounded, slow, deep, final, the ritual began, and with it the narrowing of every possible future into this single irrevocable moment. As the chanting rose, Valor felt the curse surge like a tide pulled by the moon. Heat and pressure clawed through him, demanding dominance, isolation, blood. He clenched his fists, grounding himself in Luneth's presence. Saelus instructed them to step closer, until their shadows overlapped. When their hands touched, the power spiked violently. Luneth gasped, light bursting beneath her skin, veins glowing faintly silver. Pain lanced through her chest, sharp and breath-stealing, but she held fast, focusing on connection instead of control. Memories flooded her unbidden, her mother's lullabies, nights spent hungry but hopeful, the ache of being unseen. Valor's memories collided with hers, chains, screams, waking in blood. The curse fed on those moments, swelling, desperate to reclaim dominance. Luneth tightened her grip, whispering his name, not as command but invitation. The warmth shifted, no longer a flood but a current. Valor's wolf recoiled, confused, then stilled. The runes flared brighter, stone cracking. Around them, wolves staggered back, shielding eyes. Saelus shouted for focus, for consent renewed. Luneth and Valor spoke together, voices steady, despite the pain, choosing each other over fear as the moon watched without mercy. The curse fought back. Darkness surged outward, knocking Valor to his knees. Luneth fell with him, hands still linked. The air thickened, suffocating. Voices echoed, accusations, doubts, ancient laws clawing for relevance. Irin Morshade stepped forward despite guards, shouting that this was madness, that power like Luneth's would enslave them all. His words struck deep, sowing hesitation. The curse seized on it, flaring violently. Luneth screamed as cold fire tore through her veins. For a heartbeat, she considered letting go, ending the pain, ending everything. Then she felt it. The pack's fear, yes, but also their hope, fragile and real. She remembered the child she caught in the gardens, unafraid. Luneth chose to stay. She drew the pain inward, compressing it, reshaping it through breath and truth. The light shifted from silver blue to soft white. The darkness recoiled, shrieking. Valor roared, not in rage, but release. The curse unraveled in strands, tearing free, dissolving into ash that scattered on the wind. Silence slammed down, absolute and stunned. When Luneth opened her eyes, the moon was directly overhead, impossibly bright. Valor lay beside her, chest rising, eyes clear, clear. No red haze, no trembling restraint, just exhaustion and disbelief. He laughed once, broken and stunned, then pressed his forehead to the stone. Around them, the pack stood frozen. Salis sank to her knees, tears streaking her face. The runes dimmed, cracked but intact. Luneth felt hollowed out, power quiet, not gone but resting, like a tide at low water. Valor pushed himself upright, helping her sit. He searched her face frantically, fear flickering when she swayed. She smiled weakly, reassuring him. The curse was gone. The truth settled slowly, painfully. Halvek lowered his blade. Torek exhaled a prayer. Irin stared, shaken, authority finally broken. Some wolves knelt. Others wept. A few turned away, unable to face a world changed so completely. Luneth understood then that balance did not mean peace. It meant responsibility shared, burdens redistributed. The ritual had ended the curse, but it had also ended excuses. Dawn crept in quietly, pale gold washing over cracked stone and tired faces. Luneth was wrapped in a cloak, supported on either side. Valor addressed the pack, voice hoarse but steady, announcing the curse's end and the dawn of new law. Power would no longer hide behind fear. Elders would answer to the whole. Some accepted, others did not. Already, messengers slipped away, carrying news and resentment to distant packs. Luneth listened, detached, exhaustion heavy. When Valor turned to her, asking what she needed, the simplicity of the question undid her. She asked for rest, for time, for space to heal. He granted it without hesitation. As the pack dispersed, Luneth looked once more at the silver cairn, knowing something precious had been lost along with something monstrous. She had given part of herself to break a curse that was never hers. Yet she felt no regret. The moon faded into daylight, its work done for now. Luneth Arkloon closed her eyes, letting the sun warm her skin, unaware that while one ending had been written in stone and blood, another conflict was already moving toward them, quieter, sharper, and far less forgiving. Recovery did not come gently. Luneth Arkloon drifted in and out of sleep for 2 days, waking to shifting light and hushed voices. Her body felt emptied, like a river after flood, banks aching where power had torn through. When she finally woke fully, sunlight pooled across the floor of Salis Bramblewind's den, warm and ordinary. Ordinary felt strange. Salis watched her carefully, explaining the exhaustion was natural. Balance had been restored, but the bridge remained. Luneth's power was quieter now, less volatile, yet still present, waiting for intention. Outside, Grave Moon Hollow moved cautiously, as if afraid sudden noise might undo the miracle. Luneth sensed tension beneath calm. Change had cracked the foundation, and cracks invited pressure. When Valor arrived, he did not rush to her side. He waited, giving space. The restraint mattered. He told her the curse had not returned even once. Sleep came easy. Clarity remained. The relief in his voice was unmistakable. Luneth smiled faintly, glad and frightened by how much his freedom mattered to her. She asked about Irin. Valor's jaw tightened. The elder had vanished before dawn, taking loyalists with him. Peace, it seemed, would not follow victory quietly. By the third day, Luneth insisted on walking the hollow. Torek accompanied her, attentive but respectful. Some wolves bowed now, not in fear but acknowledgement. Others watched warily, measuring what this new world demanded. Luneth felt exposed, stripped of anonymity forever. At the training grounds, Valor drilled younger wolves without cruelty, correcting patiently. The shift was subtle but profound. Leadership without terror unsettled many. Luneth joined him at the edge, watching. When he noticed her, his smile was small but real. They spoke privately about rebuilding, shared counsels, transparency, paths for grievance, without blood. Valor admitted he feared becoming weak. Luneth countered that restraint was not weakness. It was trust in others to carry weight. Their conversation was interrupted by a scout's return, breathless, bearing news of gatherings beyond Ashpine Reach. Irin was not alone. Traditionalists rallied, painting the ritual as heresy. Luneth felt the weight settle again. Breaking the curse had ignited war of belief. Valor squeezed her hand once, grounding them both. They agreed preparation mattered more than fear. The future demanded clarity and resolve, not retreat. That night, Luneth dreamed of her mother standing beneath a moonlit arch, smiling sadly. When Luneth reached for her, the image dissolved into mist. She woke with tears drying on her cheeks and a certainty blooming quiet and firm. Her bloodline did not end with her mother. It extended forward. At dawn, she sought Salus, asking about children, born after balance restored. Salus hesitated, then admitted old texts suggested Moon's blood could stabilize across generations if guided by choice, not secrecy. Luneth felt both hope and grief. A future was possible, but only if survived. Meanwhile, Avara Linth awaited judgment. Luneth requested to speak at the trial. Valor allowed it, wary but trusting. The gathering was tense. Avara stood small, defiant, fading into shame. Luneth spoke plainly, acknowledging a Malden betrayal without cruelty. She asked for exile rather than execution. Murmurs rippled. Valor weighed the request, then agreed, binding Avara from returning. The mercy surprised many. Luneth knew mercy was risky, but cycles broke only when someone stopped sharpening the blade. As Avara was escorted away, their eyes met. Briefly, gratitude tangled with regret. The hollow breathed, uneasy but altered by restraint chosen over vengeance. Preparation for conflict intensified. Valor organized defenses but refused preemptive strikes. Some challenged him openly now. Luneth felt the tension sharpen. One evening, she and Valor walked beyond the cairn, seeking quiet. He admitted fear of losing authority. She admitted fear of losing herself to expectation. They shared silence, hands brushing, intimacy gentle and deliberate. The moon rose pale, less commanding than before. Luneth sensed her power respond not to dominance, but alignment. When horns sounded abruptly, the moment shattered. Scouts reported movement, many, armed, approaching under cover of night. Irin's forces had arrived sooner than expected. Valor's orders rang clear, calm, cutting panic. Luneth returned to Salus, grounding herself, knowing panic would fracture control. As the hollow braced, Luneth realized her role was no longer simply to anchor Valor. She had to anchor herself. When the first clash echoed, steel on stone, Luneth felt fear surge and chose steadiness. She stepped forward to the silver cairn, knowing symbols mattered. Standing where balance had been restored, she became a signal. The moonlight brightened, not blinding, but guiding, as both sides converged on the truth they could no longer ignore. The confrontation at the cairn was fierce but brief. Irin stood opposite Valor, fury etched deep, shouting of stolen tradition and weakened bloodlines. Luneth stepped between them, heart pounding. She spoke not of prophecy, but of choice, of children growing without fear, of leaders answering for harm. Her words did not sway everyone, but they reached enough. When Irin lunged, Halvek blocked him, allegiance shifted by proof witnessed. The fight ended in confusion, not massacre. Irin was taken alive, stripped of authority. As dawn broke, the opposing force fractured, some fleeing, some surrendering. Luneth collapsed from strain, caught by Vailor. Victory tasted muted, complex. No cheers rang out, only exhausted relief and grief for what had been lost. As the sun climbed, Luneth understood that peace was not an event, but a practice, chosen daily. The curse was broken, but healing had just begun, demanding patience sharper than any blade and courage quieter than any roar beneath the fading moon. Morning after, the confrontation arrived thin and gray, like the world was holding its breath. Luneth Arkloon sat on the steps near the silver cairn, wrapped in a heavy cloak, watching smoke drift from extinguished fires. The hollow was quiet in a way that felt earned rather than fearful. Bodies had been tended, wounds bound, prisoners secured, yet tension lingered beneath every movement. Victory without celebration unsettled the pack more than bloodshed ever had. Luneth felt the strain in her bones, a dull ache where power had been drawn too deeply, too often. Salus warned her rest was no longer optional. Balance required care, not sacrifice alone. When Luneth closed her eyes, she sensed echoes of the ritual still woven into the stone, faint but stable. The bridge remained intact. Across the clearing, Vailor addressed small groups, listening more than commanding. The change was visible, and not everyone welcomed it. Some wolves respected strength only when it roared. Luneth understood now that leadership would always attract resentment. The question was whether fear or trust would shape the future. As clouds thinned, sunlight touched the cairn, and Luneth felt a quiet resolve settle where uncertainty had once lived. Vailor joined her without ceremony, sitting on the stone beside her. He admitted exhaustion without shame, a vulnerability that once would have been unthinkable. The night's restraint had cost him supporters, but it had preserved lives. He asked Luneth whether she believed mercy had been a mistake. Luneth answered honestly that mercy was never efficient, but it was necessary. Efficiency built graves. They shared bread in silence, grounded in simple acts. When Torek approached with news, the mood shifted. Messengers from neighboring territories requested parley, curious and cautious. Word of the broken curse had traveled fast, reshaping power dynamics beyond Grave Moon Hollow. Vailor frowned, aware diplomacy could be deadlier than blades. Luneth offered to attend, knowing her presence symbolized change. Vailor hesitated, then agreed, setting conditions to protect her autonomy. The conversation drifted toward the future they had not named. Neither spoke of love. The weight of responsibility pressed heavier. Yet when Vailor reached for her hand briefly, the contact was steady, mutual, and grounding. It was enough. The hollow stirred around them, life resuming with careful steps as the world adjusted to a reality no longer ruled by fear alone. The parley took place at Ashpine Reach, beneath towering trees, scarred by past conflict. Representatives arrived wary, eyes sharp, entourages tense. Luneth stood beside Vailor, not behind him. That mattered. Discussions were cautious, layered with accusation and curiosity. Some elders questioned the legitimacy of the ritual. Others feared precedent. Luneth spoke when invited, explaining balance without embellishment, refusing to mythologize herself. She described limits as clearly as power. Her honesty disarmed some, angered others. When one delegate accused her of manipulating Vailor, Luneth responded calmly that consent was not manipulation. The words landed hard. Vailor supported her without dominating the exchange. By dusk, no alliance was sealed, but no war declared. Progress measured in inches felt monumental. On the walk back, Luneth's strength faltered. Vailor noticed immediately, calling a halt. He insisted on rest, despite looming demands. Luneth argued briefly, then relented, recognizing old patterns of self-erasure rising. Accepting care was its own form of courage. That night, as she slept deeply, the moon rose quiet and distant, its work complete but its watch unbroken. Dreams returned, vivid and instructive. Luneth saw paths branching endlessly, some bright, some dark. She woke knowing her role was evolving. She was no longer merely a catalyst. She was a keeper. The realization frightened and steadied her in equal measure. Over the next days, Luneth trained deliberately, not to amplify power, but to contain it safely. Salis taught grounding through craft, gardening, stitching, stonework. Balance lived in the mundane. Meanwhile, Valor faced resistance within the hollow. Challenges were raised openly now. He met them without violence, inviting debate. Authority shifted from fear to accountability, slowly, painfully. One evening, a young wolf confronted Luneth, accusing her of weakening their alpha. Luneth listened, then invited him to train with Valor and see strength redefined. The offer surprised him into silence. Small moments accumulated, reshaping culture one interaction at a time. Yet not all wounds healed. Prisoners loyal to Irin whispered rebellion. Luneth sensed agitation rising again, subtler but persistent. Balance required vigilance. The cost of peace was attention, and it never slept. The warning came from Torek at dawn. A faction had escaped custody overnight, aided by sympathizers. Supplies were missing, a direction taken. Luneth felt the familiar tightening in her chest. The cycle threatened repetition. Valor reacted swiftly but refused panic. He organized pursuit, careful and contained. Luneth insisted on joining. This time, no one objected. They tracked the fugitives into ravines thick with mist. Confrontation came sudden and sharp. Blades flashed, fear surged. Luneth grounded herself, projecting calm rather than force. The escapees faltered, confusion rippling through their ranks. Valor subdued the leader without killing him. Proving control was not weakness. When it ended, silence followed, heavy but resolved. The captured wolves wept, rage dissolving into shame. Luneth addressed them softly, offering return under conditions of accountability. Some refused and fled. Others accepted. Choice remained central. As they returned to the hollow, Luneth felt the toll of constant vigilance weigh heavy. Yet she also felt something new. Confidence not born of power, but of purpose chosen freely. The moon watched from behind thin cloud, no longer commanding, simply witnessing as balance held, fragile but real, against the pull of old shadows. The sky darkened unnaturally fast that evening, clouds swallowing the horizon as if night were arriving early to collect a debt. Luneth Arcloon felt it before the alarm sounded, a tightening in the air, a pressure behind her eyes that had nothing to do with the moon. She stood at the silver cairn, fingers pressed to the cracked stone, sensing a disturbance deeper than rebellion. This was not Irin's lingering influence. This was desperation, sharpened into intent. Horns finally echoed through Grave Moon Hollow, frantic and uneven. Torek ran toward her, breathless, reporting multiple fires at the outer stores, guards drawn away from the inner paths. A distraction. Luneth's heart hammered as realization struck. Someone was coming for her, not to debate, not to bargain, to end the balance permanently. She turned toward Salis's den, just as a scream cut through the air. Power stirred inside Luneth, instinctive and fierce. She ran, cloak snapping behind her, boots slipping on stone. Fear surged, but clarity followed. This was the moment every warning had circled. The cost of balance was not paid in ritual alone. It demanded defense. As shadows moved where they should not, Luneth understood the final confrontation would not be about belief or tradition. It would be about survival, and who was willing to burn the future to reclaim the past. Valor Duskheart reached the den, seconds after Luneth, blade already drawn. Flames licked the edges of the structure, smoke choking the air. Inside, Salis lay unconscious, struck down. Valor felt rage spike, sharp and dangerous, but the absence of the curse kept it clean, controlled. Luneth knelt beside Salis briefly, confirming she lived, then stood as footsteps approached, fast and heavy. The attackers emerged from smoke, fanatics bearing old sigils carved into armor, eyes bright with conviction. Their leader stepped forward, voice trembling with fervor. He accused Luneth of theft, of stealing suffering that defined them, of robbing the world of a necessary monster. Valor moved to strike, but Luneth stopped him with a raised hand. She stepped forward alone. The leader laughed, raising a blade dipped in something dark and foul. Moon-dampened iron, designed to kill her specifically. Fear flared, but Luneth did not retreat. She spoke calmly, naming the truth they refused. That pain was not identity. That survival did not require sacrifice of innocence. Her words faltered when the blade struck, grazing her shoulder. Pain exploded. The power surged, wild for a heartbeat. Valor roared, charging, but Luneth forced the energy inward, shaping it deliberately, for the first time without the moon's command. The ground trembled as Luneth planted her feet. Light spread outward, not blinding, not violent, anchoring. The attackers faltered as if caught in thick water. Their fury dulled, conviction cracking under the weight of choice suddenly visible. Luneth felt everything, fear, rage, grief, and let it pass through without clinging. The blade fell from the leader's hand. He dropped to his knees, sobbing, the fight draining from him. Others fled, scattering into smoke and dark. The fires guttered out as rain began, sudden and heavy. Luneth sagged, strength failing at last. Valor caught her, holding her upright as the hollow converged. He pressed his forehead to hers, voice breaking as he asked if she was still here. She smiled faintly, blood mixing with rain, and nodded. The danger had been real, final, and yet they stood. Guards secured the remaining attackers. Salus was carried to safety. The hollow breathed again, shaken but alive. Luneth understood then that this was the true climax. Not ritual, not prophecy, but choice under fire. She had chosen restraint when destruction was easier, and in doing so she had proven balance could withstand even the most desperate violence. Night deepened as the fires died completely. The pack gathered, soaked and silent, watching Luneth and Valor stand together at the cairn once more. No chants rose, no ritual words were needed. Valor addressed them plainly, recounting what had happened without embellishment. He named the danger honestly and did not promise safety. He promised accountability. Then he stepped aside and invited Luneth to speak. She hesitated, pain throbbing, exhaustion heavy. Still she stepped forward. She told them she was not a shield that could absorb endless hatred. Balance required participation, choice, courage from everyone. She said peace was not passive. It demanded confronting fear without turning it into cruelty. Her voice shook but did not break. When she finished, silence followed. Then a single knee bent, then another. Not submission, commitment. Luneth felt tears burn, surprised by relief. The hollow was not healed, but it was changed. The attackers had failed not because of power, but because belief had finally fractured under truth. As the moon slipped briefly from cloud cover, Luneth felt no pull, no demand, only quiet affirmation. The final trial had passed. Dawn would bring consequences, but also resolution long denied. As the night waned, Luneth was carried to Salus's den, consciousness flickering. Valor stayed, refusing rest. When dawn finally bled pale across the hollow, Luneth woke to birdsong and the smell of clean rain. Pain remained, but it was survivable. Salus sat nearby, alive and smiling weakly. Valor slept upright in a chair, exhaustion etched deep. Luneth watched him, heart full and aching. The war of belief had reached its peak and broken against restraint. There would be no more secret factions strong enough to threaten balance. The old world had spent its last fury. As Valor stirred, Luneth reached for his hand. He woke, eyes soft with relief. Outside, the hollow rebuilt quietly. No cheers, no grand declarations, just work. Luneth understood the ending would not be loud. It would be steady. The final chapter would not be about victory, but about living with what had been won and what had been lost, to finally step into a future chosen, not inherited, under a sky that no longer demanded blood to stay whole. The morning sun rose clean and pale over Grave Moon Hollow, as if the land itself had exhaled after holding its breath for generations. Luneth Arkloon stood at the threshold of the silver cairn, feeling stone warm beneath her bare feet. The ache in her body lingered, but it was no longer frightening. Pain had become a signal, not a sentence. Around her, the hollow moved with quiet purpose. Repairs were underway, fires rebuilt, paths cleared. No one rushed, no one barked orders. The change was subtle, yet unmistakable. Luneth felt lighter, not because responsibility had lifted, but because it was no longer carried alone. Salis joined her, leaning on a staff, eyes bright with pride. She confirmed the final truth Luneth had already sensed. The moon's blood was stable. It no longer surged uncontrollably or responded to fear. It answered choice. The bridge remained, but it would never again demand sacrifice through pain. Luneth closed her eyes, breathing in cold air and pine. For the first time since childhood, her power felt like a companion rather than a burden. The moon had released her. What came next would be built by human hands and steady hearts, not prophecy or terror. Valor Duskhart addressed the pack at midday beneath an open sky. No throne, no armor, no symbols of fear. He spoke plainly of the curse, naming it ended without myth or embellishment. He acknowledged the harm done under its shadow, taking responsibility without excuses. The act stunned many more than any roar ever had. Then he announced the dissolution of absolute alpha rule. Leadership would remain, but councils would be elected, laws rewritten, and challenges answered openly. Murmurs rippled, some fearful, some hopeful. Valor did not demand loyalty. He invited participation. When he finished, he stepped aside and motioned to Luneth. The gesture carried weight. Luneth spoke of balance as practice, not miracle. She reminded them that peace would fail if guarded only by one pair of hands. Her voice did not carry command. It carried trust. When questions followed, she answered them honestly, even when the answers were uncertain. By the time the gathering dispersed, the hollow felt different, not united by fear or worship, but by shared responsibility. Valor met Luneth's gaze afterward, gratitude softening his features. He had been freed from madness. Now he was choosing to be free from tyranny, too. In the days that followed, life reshaped itself slowly. Some wolves left, unwilling to abandon the old ways. Others arrived, curious and cautious. Luneth spent hours with Salis refining grounding practices to teach future moon-blooded children, should they appear. Knowledge would no longer be hidden. Valor trained warriors differently now, emphasizing restraint, protection, and accountability. They worked side by side often, sometimes in silence, sometimes in laughter that surprised them both. Their connection deepened, not through urgency, but through choice renewed daily. One evening, Valor asked Luneth what she wanted, truly beyond duty. The question startled her. After a long pause, she answered simply, a life where she could belong without being consumed. Valor nodded, understanding. He told her he wanted the same. They did not promise forever. They promised honesty. The commitment felt stronger than oaths. As seasons shifted, the hollow held steady. No new factions rose. No moon demanded blood. The world did not become perfect, but it became possible. That, Luneth realized, was the real victory. On the anniversary of the ritual, the pack gathered again at the cairn, not for magic, but for remembrance. Names of the lost were spoken, lessons recorded. Children played at the edges, laughter threading through solemnity. Luneth watched them, heart full and steady. When a young girl asked her why the stones glowed faintly in moonlight, Luneth smiled and said they remembered choices. That seemed enough. As dusk settled, Valor joined her, offering his hand. She took it without hesitation. Together, they looked out over Grave Moon Hollow, rebuilt and breathing. The moon rose slowly, pale and distant, no longer a master. Luneth felt no pull, only quiet acknowledgement. She had broken a curse not by overpowering it, but by refusing to become what it demanded. The alpha had been freed, not by blood spilled, but by truth held steady. The land would remember that. Stories would soften with time, becoming legend. But Luneth would remember the cost and the care required to keep balance alive. As night deepened, Luneth and Valor walked away from the cairn, footsteps aligned, shadows stretching long behind them. The future was unwritten, uncertain, and shared. No prophecy waited to claim them. No curse lingered to define them. Only choice, renewed each day. And under a moon that finally watched without demanding payment, Luneth Arcloon stepped fully into a life she had not inherited, but earned, whole, unbound, and free. If this story moved you, don't leave quietly. Hit the like button so more people can find it. Subscribe if you want more emotionally powerful stories like this, new worlds, deep characters, and endings that actually mean something. Tell me in the comments what part stayed with you the most, and whether you'd choose balance, power, or freedom if you were in Luneth's place. Share this with someone who loves stories that feel like a movie in your mind. Until the next tale, stay curious, stay kind, and remember, the strongest magic is the choice to change.